Hi, I'm Richard from Living Improvements. My deck at home was in terrible shape and needed a makeover, so I went down to Hirepool and grabbed a floor sander, and I want to show you the process I went through to restore my deck. We laid the deck about 1.5 years ago, and with the mud that was in the backyard and an inferior oil product that I laid on it, it was discoloured, it was patchy, the decking boards themselves were starting to cup, and because of the moisture it had been absorbing, it was starting to go a bit mouldy and gross. I decided I'd start by washing my deck to see what I was working with. Having the clean timber as well, I think, helped with the new oil going in. In order to get the deck looking good again, it really needed to be sanded right back. Now, I've never used a floor sander before, but I thought I'd give it a crack, and it turned out to be really easy. Because my decking boards were so cupped, I wanted to sand them back to being flat. Before I did that, I took some time to screw down all the screws a couple of mils so you don't sand the top of the screws off. In order to flatten the boards, I'd start with an 80 grit on the drum sander. You sand on a diagonal, and that just helps to give a nice uniform flat surface. From the 80 grit and the diagonal, I go on to running the full length of the board at 100 and then repeat that again at 120 grit. And that's how you end up with a nice, smooth, fresh looking board. So the process of using a floor sander is actually really simple. What you have to focus on is keeping the drum off the deck until you're moving. So starting to move forward and then slowly lowering the drum until it starts sanding, and at the end of the run, slowly tilting the drum up off the deck while you're still moving so that you don't sit in one spot and create a mark. Make sure when you hire the machine that you get plenty of sheets. Now I've got a fairly large deck here, and I probably used up to 5 sheets of each grit because you can always return the ones you don't need and you don't want to have to drive back if you've run out of sheets. And changing the sheets themselves from 80 grit as you move up or as you need to replace them is a really simple process. All you need is a screwdriver. It's pretty self-explanatory, and this video is online of how to do it. I also used a floor edging sander to get around the edges, and the great thing about a floor edging sander is that it has a protective shield around the front so that you can sand right up against your cladding, or if you're doing floors, up against your skirting in your house, and it protects that from getting any damage. Now, doing the oiling is probably the easiest part of the job. Anyone can do it. It takes no time at all. Just make sure you use a really good quality oil. It's worthwhile to spend extra bit of money to get the good stuff. Now make sure you've got a couple of decent days of weather to do this. I probably could have got this deck done in one day, but you don't want to be sanding or trying to oil the deck when there's rain in the forecast because it's just not going to go well. So overall, I'm really stoked with the outcome. The results speak for themselves. The deck's smooth and flat and clean and tidy. Using the floor sander was surprisingly easy and just made the whole job super quick. You can check out the floor sanders I used on the Hirepool website, and they have other information on there about deck restoration.